Today's episode is brought to you by Skillshare, where you can explore thousands of online classes in design, photography, business, and more. Learn from the world's best teachers and join a learning community of over 1 million creators. Learn at your own pace by watching classes on your own schedule. You can even share your work and collaborate with students around the world too. With real projects and feedback from the Skillshare community, it's like being in a real class, but on your own time. Classes can even be watched offline with the Skillshare mobile apps on both Apple and Android devices. Go to Skillshare.com and get 3 free months with the discount code UNTITLED at checkout for new customers. Thank you, Skillshare, for supporting Still Untitled. And now on with the show. Welcome to Still Untitled, the Adam Savage Project. I'm Will.
I'm Adam.
Norm's at Dragon
Where's
Con.
Norm?
Norm, it's Monday of Dragon Con, so likely he's laying in a ditch someplace in a costume.
Yeah. Right. He's a red shirt.
The thing about Dragon Con, I've never been.
Oh.
But from what everyone's told me over the years, it starts off kind of serious and there's panels, and then it increasingly devolves into party by the end of the third day.
Dragon Con makes Comic-Con look like amateur night from a costuming perspective.
Yeah.
Dragon Con is a just deeply embedded costuming culture. So no matter when you're wandering through your hotel, it is just everyone's in costume, and down in the lobby it's crazy. There's like people playing D&D on the carpet and drinking games and sing-alongs and karaoke, and I think nobody takes their costumes off for a couple of days, which you can smell when you get into the elevators.
That's fun.
I'm pretty sure a few of them are having sex in costume.
It's that kind of party.
Hey man,
well, we'll have to ask Norm how it goes when he gets back.
I am the biggest promoter of let your freak flag fly, and I have no qualms about that. Like, hey, if that's your thing, do your thing, and I'm so glad you found a place to go do it. And I love Dragon Con. I haven't been in a couple of years, which I miss. I'm hoping to go next year.
Well,
so basically, if you're at Dragon Con and you're having sex in your costume, I am actually totally think that's great. It's also, kind of funny. So I'm making a little bit of fun of it here, but only just a tad.
I mean, man, we live in San Francisco.
We do.
The first weekend after I moved to San Francisco was Labor Day weekend, or it was Folsom Street Fair weekend. So my wife had just gotten here. My then girlfriend, now wife, had just gotten here. I was like, hey, let's go downtown. We'll check it out. I'll show you what San Francisco, because I'd been out here for about a month before she got here. And we got on the Muni, and the next stop, like 6 guys get in, all wearing like leather bikini thongs and suspenders. And one guy had a 12-foot whip and the whole thing. And we kind of looked at it and we're like, oh, okay, so this is what San Francisco is going to be like. Turns out not every weekend, but often enough.
Funny that you say this because the very first time my parents came to San Francisco, which was in the early 90s, to visit me, I took them to Orphan Andy's over there in the Castro. And within 10 seconds, they saw a man's hairy bottom. Yeah. Because he was wearing assless chaps and nothing else.
Assless chaps, it's redundant. All chaps are assless.
This is true. But when you're getting an assful, and you're seeing that, it feels like it's necessary. So, but my mom's birthday is in October. So there was a period of time where every single time she came to San Francisco, it was during the Folsom Street Fair. Oh, yeah. And she would see some man's hairy bottom.
Well, so our second apartment in the city was at 11th and Harrison, which is right on the outside border of Folsom Street Fair zone. And one year my dad came out to visit, and he's lived in Northeast Tennessee for a long time. Is reasonably conservative by San Francisco standards, probably a dirty hippie by Northeast Tennessee standards. But the whipping post for Folsom Street Fair was right outside my apartment window.
Oh man.
And we didn't make the connection that he was going to be here that weekend. We were like, maybe we should just go to Napa or something instead. This will be but it worked out. It was fine. Everything was cool. So. He took his turn, and then we got in the cab and went out. So
my mom has never minded. When I was born, I spent the first few years of my life in the West Village. So she is used to seeing crazy things happen.
This is like early 70s West Village,
late 60s, early 70s. Yeah.
So she was on.
Yeah, she's an old pro.
Yeah, but she knows what's going on.
At the same time, she'd be like, "Oh." So the other thing that happened is when I've been living in and around the Mission for most of my 25 years in San Francisco, and about 5-6 years ago, we moved back here. And when we did, we moved, I'm just going to say we're near Bayreuth. That's a reasonable location.
Big window.
Yeah, we're near Bayreuth. And we moved during Pride weekend of 2010.
Okay.
And so the boys are like, we had an impromptu housewarming party like you do. And friends are coming over and we keep sending the boys out. So they're like 11. We keep sending them out to Bayreuth to buy, more sodas and more snacks and stuff like that. And thing one and thing two, but especially thing two, are like, do you need us to go out and get anything else? And then they're coming back and they're like, it's amazing. The whole world is singing Lady Gaga. And then about a week later, I'm telling this story and someone says, well, why they probably wanted to keep going out and getting stuff is because there were a lot of boobs out there.
Yeah.
They might not have been the boobs they were thinking of, but they were boobs.
Any port in the storm, man.
And so I was like, oh. So I went to thing one and I said, were there boobs around last weekend? And he was like, no. And I went to thing two and I was like, were there boobs around last weekend? And he was like, oh, yeah. Hold on just a second. Here comes.
Oh, thank you, sir.
That's it. Everyone, you caught a glimpse of the ear of thing one there delivering some lattes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Hold on just a second.
Yeah. Cut. Yeah,
But you should. I love the idea of them seeing his ear.
I do the hard cuts. I've leaned into YouTube. It's just like all of a sudden everybody's head's over 3 inches to the left.
So now we are properly latteed
caffeinated.
You have some questions.
I have many questions.
Well, maybe I have answers.
You mean for the podcast or just in general?
Well, I must have said this on the podcast back when Radio Shack is no longer, right?
No, they're all gone now.
Right. So back
some of them are Sprint stores.
Back when they were. It's a shame, because I really need a place I can spend $10 for a CD-ROM.
I mean, I like it when people ask me what my phone number is when I need batteries. That's my apologies. I don't remember whose bit that is.
I've done what my dad did, which was, you don't need to know that.
This is not the phone number you're looking for.
But back when Radio Shack had the tagline, you've got questions, we've got answers. Around that time, I walked into a Radio Shack and there was a guy had brought his Polaroid SX70 into the store and he's like, the batteries are dead. And the store kid had taken apart in good faith the entire SX70 looking for the battery, not realizing in a Polaroid SX70 the battery is in every roll of film.
Oh no.
I was I'm not blaming the kid for not knowing that outright, but it was like one of those moments of like, you're working at Radio Shack. And that's when for us the tagline became Radio Shack, you've got questions? Well, so do we.
We were in a meeting on Thursday, and one of the people we were with spilled water in her laptop at our office. And I said, "Wait, I can fix this. I know how to do this."
Rice?
No. I just opened it up, took it all apart, dried every piece off, put it all back together.
Did it work?
Seemed like it. We'll see if it holds.
I have spilled more water on my latest laptop than ever before. I've spilled water over it at least 3 times, but in each case, somehow the water managed to miss anything critical and was just a totally superficial spill. Like, here's a corner, there's a corner over here. And
a modern MacBook, it's all battery, right? There's a little tiny motherboard, a whole lot of battery, and the battery only has a couple of places where anything can get on it. So
it's true.
You should get your laptop Liquipelled. Liquipell is a water repellent nano coating.
Okay.
You can send it off.
The next one done that way.
Yeah.
Because if I had this one done that way, I would just be sealing in the dirt and the dents. This one's about 2 years old.
Yeah. So you're due next time they refresh. You'll make it happen. I have questions per our earlier statement. If you have questions for Still Untitled, you can send them to podcast@tested.com with the subject line questions for Adam.
Yes.
This first one comes from Emil. Emil says, "Hey guys, I love seeing the different parts of your collection." I guess he means you. And the stories behind them. Anyway, have you seen the newest trailer for The Martian, and what did you think of it?
I love the newest trailer for The Martian. I can't freaking wait. I can't wait. And I will tell you that a friend of mine managed to he managed to get an invite to one of the pre-screenings of The Martian. Now, this is an unfinished cut, right? So some of these special effects shots have blue screen visible and they haven't completed the CG, but it's just to get the audience's feel for the pacing and how they want it to go. And, you know, this is, he said it's amazing. He said it's totally amazing.
We've talked about The Martian a lot on this Still Untitled, and this is only a test at this point. People who've been to those screenings, we've gotten enough feedback from those now that I'm like, I feel pretty okay about how this is going to go.
Very, very excited. I also I want to take the opportunity. So very, very excited. I must say, in the book, it's about chapter 6 or 7 that you cut back to Earth. And it's only then that you realize, holy cow, of course, this would be a global event.
Oh, yeah.
It would be so important. And that's where some of the real emotion of the book happens. And the trailer feels like it accurately communicates that as well.
Well, the thing that's amazing about that cut, we've talked about this at length, so I'm not going to go into it, but you get the feeling that you're part of one of the 7 billion people on Earth who want him to live.
Right.
That's the book does that really well.
Identify.
And I got the little chill bumps on the arm as a result.
Wait, I have one more thing, which is last week's the interview with the wonderful and engaging Jason Reitman is up on the site.
You guys should all go watch that. I'll do audio for that in the Mary Roach talking room soon, so they'll be on the feeds in the not too distant future.
Your request to have audio is happening.
Yes,
the wheels are in motion.
We did it for Andy Weir, and it was a massive success. And then that Andy Weir talking room ended up being the biggest one we've had to date. Like 150,000 people watched it. Awesome. So my hope is that if we do the podcast, the deal is that you guys have to tell your friends to go watch the YouTube video. That's all I ask.
See one, do one. And one of the lead questions was from a bibliophile, a book lover who wanted a tested video of a tour through my library, which is, I think, a great idea.
We can totally do that.
And I totally think we should do that. But the questioner also asked, why am I looking at some of the pages of the books, the spines, why are the books turned the way they are?
You put the spine down or spine up sometimes.
I put the spine up instead of spine out. So this is because a couple of years ago, my wife and I embarked on attempting to scan the ISBN numbers of our entire library into Delicious.
Yeah, Delicious Library.
Delicious Library, yes. And we have a bunch of sections, and there's a giant poetry section because my wife has an MFA in poetry. There is a giant, you didn't know that. Yeah, that's something.
She's a poet, and you guys didn't know it.
There's a large political section, which I'm sure if you've listened to me for a while, you know that I would be having.
It's all about conservative theory.
Yeah, Cato papers. Yeah. There is a large film and art section. There is a DIY section, which includes magic and poker books, and tons and tons of art books. Biography. There are sections on. There's a reference section. There's a section of shit we haven't read yet.
There's like art and design stuff.
Yeah. And then behind me in the talking room, because I always sit on the camera right, is the fiction section, which is sorted alphabetically by author. And the two hardest sections to scan the ISBNs of are our poetry section and our fiction section. And it's because a lot of the poetry books and the fiction books are old. And they don't have either UPC symbols that Delicious just scans in, which means you have to do it manually. And this is where this project ground to a complete halt. So people who think that I'm just constantly productive, please know that for everything I finish, there's a bloody body of an unfinished project lying by the side of the road. And those books all spine up is like basically half my fiction section, which I have not yet gotten the energy to manually type in the ISBN.
Now, Delicious, you can just take a picture of the cover. And if Amazon has that edition anywhere in there, if it's not more than 40 years old,
well, so I do have a fair number that
might work. It might help a little bit.
All right. So that's there's another answer.
There you go. Yeah. We're answering stuff people didn't even ask.
Yes.
Now.
Well, they asked it on the website.
Okay.
Look, I'm reading comments. How messed up is that?
You shouldn't.
The comments on Tested are lovely.
That's true.
I'm sure now someone's going to take it on themselves to subvert that.
Well, the YouTube comments, I have to say, the YouTube comments have gotten
I don't read those.
More civil.
Really?
recently.
Well, that's a pretty low bar.
We went on a massive muting campaign. So basically, if you ever say anything rude, you probably got muted. And now the only people that have survived that seem like they might be decent human beings.
Hey, I bet you're wondering what these are.
Epaulets?
They are
For
a pilot's uniform.
which pilot?
Well, I'm not going to airline pilot.
Oh,
And here's the thing is, at some point in the last 6 months, I flew, and the pilot was a fan of the show and showed me the cockpit. And
Ooh.
I said, I put together a pilot's uniform for our episode about plane boarding. And he said, yeah, it was a good uniform. And I said, those are really hard to find those costume parts because they don't make it easy to buy a pilot's uniform.
there's reasons for that. If you've
Yes,
seen
there's
Catch Me If
totally
You Can.
reasons. And he goes, was there any part you couldn't find? And I was like, I couldn't get the stripes for the shirt. And he went, and he gave me his shirt.
That's
stripes.
awesome.
Wasn't that awesome?
That's
I'm
awesome.
not going to reveal the airline or when I flew so that you can't triangulate
Yeah.
that because I don't want to get him in trouble.
Oh, that's rad.
Yeah.
Would you ever wear that to the airport? That seems like a bad idea, right?
No, you've seen the Jimmy Kimmel sketch, right?
No.
Oh, way back. I think it's during the Man Show. Kimmel and Adam Carolla put on pilots' uniforms and sat in a hotel bar and got shit-faced.
Oh, no.
No, and then
Oh, no.
yeah, and their whole point was to go. They repeatedly do this. All right, well, we got to get going. Let's go. It's time to fly. And then the best is people kept going, what airline are you flying?
I miss the Man Show. The Man Show was real up and down, but the highs were so good. Oh, good God.
Sorry, next question.
Don says, hey guys, I'm looking to do some projects that require a lot of sanding, but I live in a New York City apartment without access to a yard or garage. Do you have any suggestions for dust management in a small enclosed space? Also, do you have suggestions for small reciprocating saw like the one Norman Frank used to cut their vacuum form shadow stormtrooper pieces that aren't driven by compressed air? The electrical ones seem too big for small work. Thanks. Always be testing.
Okay.
So we answered this question on This Is Only a Test. So I'm interested to see what your response is because we told him don't sand inside a small apartment in New York.
No, I totally disagree.
Okay.
I think it's totally doable. I think that living in a small apartment, as I have done, and working in a way that does not, I'm assuming you want to work in a way that does not ruin the apartment for living.
I think that's a fair assessment. Fair
Let's make
assumption.
that assumption. Then let's further assume that you then want to work in a way that's efficient, doesn't take too long to set up and take down, and gets the job done without ruining the apartment. And this is actually where you can, as a budding maker, develop some habits that I think are really great, even when you eventually have a really big shop. So let's posit that you can sit there and dream, because you should, that you will one day have a nice big workspace.
Or at least a garage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I've done projects in tiny apartments where it took weeks of sanding. So there's a couple of things. One is Micromark, which is a model making catalog. And I think they definitely have a website. They sell a lovely little spray hood for doing airbrushing in an apartment that is actually also wonderful for sanding in front of.
Oh.
So when you're sanding, you're going to create two kinds of dust. You're going to create dust under your work, and you're going to create dust that floats in the air.
Like the fines that kind of
Yeah,
go
the
up.
really fine stuff. The fine stuff that goes in the air is the stuff you have to worry about. The stuff that falls down, you don't have to worry about that. You just need to put down you can
use a
sheet.
cutting mat or a piece of plastic or whatever.
And this is actually kind of cool. Have you ever seen a jeweler's workbench where they have an apron that is part of the workbench? And this is because jewelers are working with gold and precious metals. They want to capture and not lose any of that dust. Like gold dust is worth something.
Well, watchmakers do the same thing. So that if they lose a tiny little sprocket, the odds of it popping off and going in the apron is someplace they can find it. Yeah.
So I have usually when I was working in an apartment, I had a towel dedicated to the sanding. And it was great. So I'd sand into the towel, and because it was terry cloth, it held the dust nicely until I took it outside and boom, boom, shook it out. I had a problem with the free-floating dust, which meant that I would occasionally wipe down all the surfaces in my office to kind of keep them clean. But Micromark sells this lovely little spray hood, which would be ideal for capturing that free-floating dust.
And do you hook it up to like a shop vac or something like that?
I think it's got a little squirrel fan in it or some kind of computer fan and a filter.
Okay.
Or do you put it out the window or something like that? But that sort of thing, to hold on to that dust is a terrific solution. Now,
you're not going to sand like a shelf or something like that in your apartment.
No. I'm thinking that you're sanding garage kits or model kits or something like that, adding Bondo to something. Really,
finishing your 3D prints, stuff like that.
Exactly. But that practice of, so let's see, best practices. One is to have your tools and your sanding stuff in a place that is accessible to you. So it's not like inside a box that's inside a box that's inside a box. So make that accessible. Two, and people, I was amazed when I taught at the Academy of Art how much people needed help with this, but everyone sands wrong, in my opinion. They use a piece of sandpaper way past its utility. And like, sandpaper is relatively inexpensive and your time is worth more. So go ahead and keep on refreshing that piece of sandpaper as soon as it's gummed up. I find blue jeans, by the way, are great for getting dust out of sandpaper. But as soon as that piece of sandpaper isn't really gripping or grating with the right amount of grit, toss it out, tear off a new one, and keep on sanding.
And the finer your sandpaper, the more frequently you have to switch it, right?
It's true. Yeah. Absolutely. You'll gum it up quickly. And then so you'll have a toolbox, but then you'll also have the project box. And I recommend those be separate. That means that you could even, let's say, have a box with the towel in it and the work inside the towel, and the towel goes like that. So that when you want to sand, you open it up, pull it out, you sand above it, you work on it, and then you put it back away.
So when you say a project box and a toolbox, you mean a place to keep your tools that's separate from, and then you keep a separate box for your projects.
Yes.
For each project has its own box. Like you use those, you use some red trays sometimes for that stuff.
Yeah.
I know, like I used to use cafeteria trays for that, like
Cafeteria trays are great.
The old melamine ones.
Yep. I've used enamel medical trays, which you can find at flea markets and stuff like that. And those are great.
I wouldn't encourage you to do this, but the kind of tray that they have at McDonald's, like the kind that they hand your food out when you eat in the restaurant, those are great. You can find those at flea markets all the time because people must steal them or something.
I guess they might. So yeah, that's a terrific solution. And remember that remember two things. If you make an efficient system for being able to open up your work and use it and then put it back away again, you're building a protocol for working clean and efficiently that will serve you for the rest of your life. Two is, remember, René Magritte, one of the surrealists, one of my favorite painters of all time, painted his whole life in a corner of a small Paris apartment.
Wow.
Yeah. So, don't lament the small apartment working. Some of the greatest artists in the world have done it, and it's totally possible.
Very good. Cameron says, hey guys, I have a question about movie-related podcasts. I enjoy movies at what I feel is a superficial level, meaning I don't necessarily clue into the deeper meaning behind a movie's use of symbolism, imagery, etc. For example, the glass of water scene from Shutter Island. This is something that would take me a while to understand in the wider context of the movie. Is this something that just comes naturally to you guys? It's difficult because I only ever see your final conclusions while discussing films and not the thought process that precedes them. Is this something you got better at over time? I would really like to improve this skill, but I'm not quite sure how to proceed. Are there any good film analyses you would recommend to help me see and understand the deeper meaning of the movies? Adam Savage?
Every frame a picture.
Oh, that's great.
This is a wonderful, what would you call it? A video podcast? A video series?
So the thing I was going to say is that just talking to people about it or listening to people talk about it is the thing that helped me more than anything else.
Absolutely. And talking to your friends about it. I mean, look, I'm in a business where I'm around filmmakers, and we're always talking about film. And please don't think that it necessarily comes easily. I'm going to tell a story.
Yeah.
You've seen Let the Right One In, right?
I haven't. This is a secret. I don't like horror movies very much.
Let the Right One In is worth your time.
Okay. I watched Cabin in the Woods and really enjoyed that.
Okay. So Let the Right One In is scary, but not in an abusive way.
Okay.
I suspect you might not like horror movies for the same reason I don't, is I don't like watching nice people get killed just randomly.
I don't like I like comical excessive violence, like in the context of a Tarantino film. I find that acceptable. Although some of his newer movies have been challenging for me on that front, even.
Yeah.
I don't like jump scares at all.
Okay.
profoundly dislike jump scares, and I don't like kind of like you said the gruesomeness, like the whole
Torture porn and that stuff.
torture porn. I never never enjoyed any of that.
Okay, so Let the Right One In is totally worth your time. And the violence happens almost entirely off screen.
Okay, that's good.
And it's much more eerie than it is scary.
Okay, is this you're talking about the original like Swedish version?
The original Swedish version.
Okay.
Not Let Me In, the Swedish version.
Okay.
I haven't seen Let Me In. I'm not
Maybe
going
great.
to.
Okay.
But the Swedish version is a masterpiece.
Okay.
It is a masterpiece. And my wife and I watched it. We were totally blown away by it. I walked into work the next day and I was talking to Steve, my director, my co-director, my producer, Steve Christensen, and we're talking about Let the Right One In. And he says, oh, yeah, I really liked the fact that at the end you realize blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh my God, he's totally right. I missed what might be the central theme of the film somehow. And I called up my wife and I was like, hey, baby, get this. Listen to this. What do you think? Blah, blah, blah. And I told her Steve's conclusion. She was like, oh my God. And we both were like, we're idiots. How did we not get that? So it's not like you just like get a bone and all of a sudden you're able to deeply analyze film. It's a process of talking through it and figuring out like what you liked, what resonated with you, why it resonated, whether it was on purpose from a filmmaker or not, because both happen all the time.
Yeah.
And there's this wonderful video series, which you can go search for, called Every Frame a Picture, that is an amazing education in film. And he'll center in on things like camera angle to show which character is winning a scene, or here is 30 great... he did one about long takes. So there are some famous long takes in motion picture history, the one at the beginning of Touch of Evil, or the one at the beginning of The Player, which refers to Touch of Evil.
The one at the end of The Weather Girl.
The one of the Weather Girl?
The Nicole Kidman movie?
Oh.
What's that?
To Die For.
To Die For.
Right.
There's this ice skating scene that goes over the entire end credits, like 10 minutes long.
Yeah.
And that sends a very specific message.
Right. And these tend to be very famous shots, but Every Frame a Picture took 15 minutes to educate the public on the fact that Steven Spielberg regularly uses minute-plus long shots, but never draws attention to them, just uses them as really efficient bits of filmmaking. And so does Woody Allen. Mm-hmm. There's an entire scene in Bullets Over Broadway where the camera walks into a bar and sits at the bar watching Chaz Palminteri and John Cusack have a conversation for like 10 minutes.
And they're in the mirror, right? Or something?
I think
it's something
they might
crazy. I
even
can't remember
be,
how
right.
it works.
And then they get up and leave, and I think I remember the camera leaving too. I'm not even sure. But so there's... Every Frame a Picture will not only talk about the symbolism or the execution of the film language within a specific film, but they'll also talk about it within relation to the history of film.
There's a language of film. This is the thing I was going to say, is that there's a language of film. Part of it is just you watch a ton of movies, but part of it is once you understand that a Dutch angle means that there should be some tension in the scene.
Right. That was the recent one. It was a good one.
Then you start looking at things completely differently, and you understand the authorial intent more, or directorial intent more, I guess. The other like I want a book that's basically like film school 101, like the stuff that you should learn in the first year of film school, that because once you know that Chekhov's gun is a concept for screenwriters, right? Then that changes the way you look at anything, because there's nothing that, in a well-constructed movie or TV show, there shouldn't be a lot that's left out there, left hanging for no reason, right?
So I would strongly recommend the amazing video series, The History of Film, narrated by this Irishman whose name escapes me right now. Have you not seen this?
No, I've not seen this.
It's absolutely incredible. It is 10 parts, I believe, and it's roughly an hour per part, like 45 to 55 minutes per. He's very, very centered on non-American films, so he really takes you all over the world from the turn of the 19th to the 20th century all the way till now, showing you all the ways and places in which film was new territory in film was being braved in Japan, in India, in Turkey, in Russia, that influenced American film, because we have the history of film is very America centric, and the actual history of film isn't necessarily. Right. So the history of film is a really watchable series that gives you a deep insight into the language of filmmaking and how that language was invented and developed.
So the last thing I'll say. Oh, go ahead.
The other thing that I would say is choose a film to get started with to learn about this, and choose a film that you know really well
and that's well documented.
Right.
Like if you want to. The Godfather is a great example of a thing that people have written millions of words on at this point. And you can dig deep, and there's a lot of interesting symbolism there, because Coppola was doing the
Blade
best.
Runner or Casablanca. Or, if you choose a movie that you have great affection for, you'll be more interested in watching it. Yeah, one of the great afternoons I ever spent was I hadn't seen Casablanca until about 10 years ago.
Wow,
I know. Well, when I did, I bought the DVD, I watched Casablanca, and then I immediately watched it again with Roger Ebert's incredible commentary.
Oh, yeah.
And that is phenomenal to do. Watching a movie, so Criterion Collection often has fantastic commentary that will take you through a film you love and shot by shot walk you through how much more amazing it is. And it will deepen your experience of the film that you love. So it's not just like this random knowledge you're getting, you're like deepening your intersection with that product.
Commentaries in general, commentaries are the reason I own 1,000+ movies on discs, right?
Yeah.
I sit and my wife and I will watch the movie, and then 3 weeks later we'll go back and rewatch with the commentary, or sometimes immediately following. The thing I would say is that I had a really interesting conversation with some friends a few weeks ago about how talking about things regularly and in a defined context changes your ability to understand the thing. So some friends of mine have a game podcast called Idle Thumbs. They're also game makers, but the thing that they talked about is that the act of talking about video games critically every week for 5 years has given them a better ability to have a conversation about making video games.
Absolutely.
Because they have shared language. They have shared language for things that may or may not have names. And then they also have the part of their brain that deals with language is better at that particular part of language.
Right.
Which is definitely Norm and I. That's happened to Norm and I talking about technology for 10 years on podcasts.
And it's an acquired skill, so it's not something you're ever done with. So my thing is my suggestions would be, in short, TLDR. Every Frame a Picture is a great gateway drug to starting to pick apart the language of film. His analysis of the Clarice Starling Hannibal Lecter scene from Silence of the Lambs is just epically wonderful.
I've got to go watch that. I've not seen that one.
Really great. The history of film, the documentary series is really worth watching. And again, choosing a movie that you are deeply familiar with will make the experience better, because you'll know those shots that they're talking about. You'll know the scenes, and you really do need to understand that, the director, when he's made the movie, has read the script 1,000 times and gone over every inch of it. And in order for you to understand, you also want to have a deep experience.
You have to internalize it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that will almost.
I think that's good. Yeah. Did you like Hugo?
I have not seen Hugo.
Oh, what? Hugo.
I have not seen it.
From a plot standpoint, it's kind of slow and boring. From a history of film standpoint,
The Lumiere brothers.
Unbelievable.
Okay. All right. So I'm not going to watch it tonight, because tonight it turns out that my wife, Mrs. Don't Try This, has not seen Ocean's 11.
Oh, that's so good. Hold on. The Clooney one?
Yeah.
Perfect.
I know. And she's like, it's supposed to be good? And I'm like, are you
fabulous.
kidding? It's Soderbergh. And she's like, oh, it is Soderbergh. Okay. Let's watch that.
I fell asleep on the couch the other night, and my wife had put it on. And I woke up and I was like, this is the best way to wake up ever. These people are so cool. I would say totally make a movie club, like make a regular, like Friday evening beers where you guys sit around and watch a movie and then talk about it with 2 or 3 of your friends. And that is a thing that you will really enjoy.
Truly.
And this will help you with this project if you have a couple of like-minded friends.
100%.
So I guess that'll do it for us this week. If you have more questions, podcast@tested.com. Put questions for Adam, even if they're for Norm or me and Adam. And we will be back next week with another episode of Still Untitled. Thank you guys for watching.
Bye, guys.
Don't forget, with Skillshare, you can explore thousands of online classes in design, photography, business, and more. Learn from the world's best teachers on your own schedule and join a learning community of over 1 million creators. With real projects and feedback from the Skillshare community, it's like being in a real class, but on your own time. Classes can even be watched offline with Skillshare's mobile apps on both Apple and Android devices. Go to Skillshare.com and get 3 free months with the discount code Untitled at checkout for new customers. Thanks Skillshare for your support of this podcast, and thank you guys for watching.
Bye.